Imagine this. You want someone to do something, but if you tell them directly, they'll resist. They'll argue, delay, or flat out refuse. Yet somehow there are people who can make others do exactly what they want while making it look like it was the other person's idea. That's not magic. That's the dark art of reverse psychology, the weapon Machiavelli used long before the term even existed. And today we're breaking down his 13 tactics for using it to outmaneuver everyone without ever seeming manipulative. The first rule of reverse psychology is that people will always defend their freedom, even when they don't know what to do with it. Tell someone what to do, and they'll instantly want the opposite. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. When a ruler wanted loyalty, he didn't demand it. He made betrayal seem like the more dangerous path. The moment people feel cornered, they push back, not because they disagree, but because they need to feel like they chose. So the real Machiavellian move is to give people a choice that isn't really a choice. Let's call it the illusion of control. You make them believe they're steering the ship while quietly fixing the course. For instance, instead of saying do this, you say you can do whatever you think is right, but I'd be careful with that option. It tends to make people look unreliable. You didn't command, you guided. You left their ego untouched, which means they'll now obey you just to prove they're independent. The second tactic is the forbidden apple. The fastest way to make someone crave something is to make it slightly out of reach. Machiavelli used this on allies, soldiers, even the public. He'd make an idea seem too controversial, too risky, too dangerous to attempt. Suddenly, people would start defending it, championing it, fighting for it. Why? Because they thought they were rebelling. They thought they were defying authority. In truth, they were following his plan all along. The third is the weak suggestion, never push too. Say something as if you don't care whether they listen or not. People are wired to resist dominance, but they're drawn to subtle confidence. For example, say you're leading a team. Instead of insisting on your idea, say, maybe this isn't the best approach, but it might just solve the problem. That sentence lowers defenses. It makes people curious. And when curiosity replaces resistance, they'll soon be the ones convincing you to do what you wanted all along. Fourth, the echo technique. People believe their own thoughts more than yours. So, repeat their ideas back to them slightly reshaped. If they say, I think we should wait. Reply, you're right, waiting could make us appear more strategic. You're agreeing with them while planting your perspective inside their sentence. Now, when they repeat it later, they won't even realize they're quoting you. The fifth is the pretended indifference. Nothing triggers desire more than someone who seems unmoved. Indifference is power because it shifts the emotional balance. If you act like you don't need something, others will project their need onto you. In relationships, leadership, or negotiation, appearing uninvested gives you control. People chase what doesn't chase back. Machiavelli would make others believe they were winning his favor while he silently dictated the pace. The sixth is the reverse threat. Instead of saying, if you do this, I'll be angry, say, do what you must, I'll adapt. This flips the psychological pressure. The other person now has to consider your calmness. Why aren't you reacting? Why aren't you fighting? Their mind scrambles to make sense of your lack of resistance, and often they'll end up complying just to regain a sense of control. Then comes the mirror trap. You reflect someone's emotions, not their words. When they're defensive, you get quiet. When they're calm, you're open. Machiavelli noted that mirroring emotion confuses people's instincts. They start trusting you faster even if they shouldn't. Once trust is established, you can lead them anywhere because they believe you're on their side. The seventh tactic is the self-image hook. Everyone has a version of themselves they want to protect. You don't tell people what to do. You appeal to who they think they are. Don't say you're wrong. Say you're usually sharp about these things, so I'm surprised you missed that. Their ego will drive them to fix the mistake. Not because you told them to, but because they need to maintain that image. You control them by controlling their reflection. Eighth, the seed of doubt. Sometimes you don't need to convince people of anything. You just plant one quiet question that makes them argue with themselves. Are you sure that's how it happened? Interesting. I heard it differently. You're not challenging their belief directly. You're turning their certainty into hesitation. Once someone starts defending their decision to themselves, you've already won. The ninth is the strategic surrender. Occasionally, pretending to lose gives you the leverage to win. Machiavelli would retreat just enough to make his opponents overconfident. When someone feels like they've beaten you, they lower their guard. And that's when influence slips in. Unnoticed. If you ever meet someone impossible to persuade, agree with them just once and watch how fast they start softening to your ideas. The 10th, the contrast principle. To make one thing seem appealing, you pit it against something worse. You don't sell the plan, you show them the disaster, the alternative. Politicians do this constantly, but it's just refined manipulation. Machiavelli used contrast like a weapon. He'd make peace seem irresistible by painting war as madness, or loyalty seem honorable by making betrayal appear suicidal. The 11th is the silence game. Most people can't handle silence. They fill it with explanations, confessions, or justifications, all of which give you power. Silence is how you let their own words become the... Machiavelli understood that speaking less creates fear, curiosity, and projection. People imagine what you're thinking, and in that imagination they hand you control of their mind. The 12th, the reversal of need. This is where you stop chasing validation and make others feel like they need you. Machiavelli did this with rulers, allies, even enemies. He'd make himself indispensable while pretending not to care. If someone tried to control him, he'd give them the illusion of power, but make their success secretly dependent on his input. That's how you trap people in invisible loyalty. They think they're using you, but they're addicted to your presence. And finally, the art of suggestive defiance. The most seductive form of persuasion is resistance. Tell someone, you probably wouldn't understand, and they'll beg for an explanation, say, you're too emotional for this, and they'll try to prove you wrong. Suggest their weakness gently and watch them destroy it themselves exactly as you intended. But all these tactics have one thing in common. They rely on understanding human pride. Machiavelli knew that pride is stronger than logic, morality, even fear. If you can make people protect their pride while serving your purpose, you will never need to manipulate them directly. They'll do it to themselves. Think about how many times someone made you chase approval by pretending not to care. How many times a boss let you decide something that was already decided, or how often a person planted an idea that you thought was your own. These are not accidents. There are invisible strings tied to the mind's desire for autonomy. And when you start to see it, you stop reacting. You stop trying to convince, to argue, to prove. Instead, you position yourself like a mirror, reflecting, suggesting, guiding without ever showing your hand. That's how real influence feels. Quiet, effortless, invisible. Because the moment you show control, you lose it. The moment you tell someone what to do, you remind them they can refuse. But when they think it's their idea, they'll fight to defend it, even if it destroys them. And that is where Machiavelli's genius lies. Not in manipulation, but in understanding human psychology so precisely that he could move entire people without ever raising his voice. The world hasn't changed. People still crave control, they still chase freedom. And if you know how to use that desire against itself, you can make anyone move in any direction you wish, while believing they're the one leading. The power of reverse psychology isn't about being deceitful. It's about mastering human instinct. It's about making your influence feel like nature, not force. Once you understand that, you stop fighting for power and start drawing it, because power in the end doesn't belong to the loudest. It belongs to the one who makes others speak his will in their own voice. Machiavelli once said that the most dangerous man is the one who hides his ambition behind humility, because when people believe you have no hidden motives, they stop defending themselves. That's when reverse psychology becomes almost effortless. Not through tricks or lies, but through perception. You make people see what they want to see in you. And that's the first step toward invisible control. Let's start with the deeper layer of the illusion of control, because that single tactic quietly shapes every other. People crave the feeling of independence, not independence itself. The moment they sense they're being influenced, they'll do anything to break free, even act against their own best interests. Machiavelli would often let others feel like they'd outsmarted him because he knew that belief made them predictable. When someone thinks they've won, their guard drops. And in that moment, the real game begins. Here's how it works in modern terms. When you want someone to follow your lead, ask questions instead of giving orders. Do you think this would work better if we waited a week? Or wouldn't? It'd be smarter to test this before committing. They'll answer with what feels like their own reasoning. But in truth, you've already framed the limits of the conversation. They're choosing between options you designed. That's the genius behind the hidden frame. A tactic that rarely gets talked about but sits at the heart of Machiavellian strategy. If you control the context, you never need to control the person. People react to frames unconsciously. If you define a decision as smart versus risky, you make it nearly impossible for them to pick the risky choice without feeling foolish. Machiavelli didn't force obedience. He created the illusion that obedience was intelligence. Then there's the false opposition. It's the trick of making your opponents believe they're resisting you while actually helping your cause. Picture two factions arguing bitterly. while unknowingly advancing your agenda. You don't need to lead the conversation, you just need to feed both sides the right phrases, the right triggers. Reverse psychology thrives on polarity. The more people argue to prove they're right, the deeper they bury themselves in your design. This is why Machiavelli never tried to win arguments. He'd quietly create conditions where both outcomes favored him. He knew that direct persuasion is weak. Subtle resistance, however, makes people prove your point for you. The modern mind still falls for this every day. When someone tells you don't look, you have to look. When they tell you you wouldn't understand, your pride forces you to try. You think you're disobeying, but you're performing exactly as intended. The ego trap builds on that idea. It's one of Machiavelli's most dangerous psychological snares, and it still works flawlessly. You flatter someone's intelligence in a way that subtly guides their behavior. I know you're too logical to be swayed by emotion. That sounds like a compliment, but it forces them to act emotionless, even if their instincts disagree. You gave them an identity to protect, and now they'll act according to it. Reverse psychology doesn't push people. It pulls them by their self-image, and it gets darker. When Machiavelli wanted loyalty, he didn't demand it. He challenged it. He'd make his allies prove their commitment voluntarily, because what people choose to sacrifice for feels sacred. It's why leaders who seem detached often inspire more devotion than those who beg for loyalty. By withdrawing validation, you create a vacuum others rush to fill. That's the law of the void in motion. Absence as control. The next layer is the controlled contradiction. You act unpredictably just enough to keep others unsure of your motives. Human beings crave patterns, and when they can't find one, they become cautious, observant, almost submissive. A Machiavellian mind uses contradiction to stay unreadable. One moment supportive, the next indifferent. It's not chaos, it's strategy. When people can't predict you, they try to please you. But reverse psychology also depends on restraint. Too much cleverness exposes itself. Too much detachment looks manipulative. The balance comes from authenticity that's deliberately rationed. Machiavelli would give just enough truth to make his deception believable. That's the half-life effect, where sincerity and strategy merge so seamlessly that no one can tell which is which. You don't fake emotion. You control its visibility. One of the most effective but least recognized tactics is the power of reverse desire. Instead of pursuing what you want, you make it seem undesirable or even a burden. For example, if you want someone's attention, act like their attention complicates your life. People chase what seems scarce, but they also chase what seems to reject them. Machiavelli understood that attraction, loyalty, even admiration increase when they meet resistance. He once wrote that people value liberty most when they're about to lose it. The same applies to people's interest in you. Another dimension of this is the surrendered will. When you agree with someone to an extreme degree, they become suspicious of their own argument. You're absolutely right. No question about it. That kind of over-agreement disarms logic. It forces people to revisit their stance, wondering if they're missing something. You didn't oppose them. You amplified them until they collapsed under their own conviction. This is the subtle cruelty of psychological judo, using their momentum against them. Let's talk about the slow withdrawal. It's not just about absence. It's about timing. You give someone consistent validation, approval, or attention. Then you withdraw it unpredictably. The result is obsession. Their mind loops, replaying every interaction, trying to understand what changed. That confusion becomes dependency. Reverse psychology at its peak doesn't make people do things for you. It makes them unable to stop thinking about you. But here's the paradox. To master these tactics, you can't be enslaved by them. Machiavelli warned that once you start using manipulation purely for ego, it consumes you. The art isn't in tricking others, it's in predicting them. Understanding that most people's actions are reactions to insecurity, to pride, to the illusion of choice. Reverse psychology isn't about control, it's about creating an environment where control is unnecessary because everyone already moves in your direction naturally. So, how do you apply this without becoming deceitful by shifting your focus from force to influence? Don't tell people what to do. Create environments where the desirable choice becomes self-evident. Don't argue, frame. Don't chase, withdraw. Don't dominate. Mirror. Every tactic here isn't about pretending. It's about seeing the psychological currents beneath behavior and quietly steering them. The beauty of Machiavelli's mind was not in his ruthlessness, but in his understanding of how fragile human autonomy really is. People think they act freely, but most of the time they're reacting to invisible cues, social mirrors, and emotional triggers planted long before they realize it. Once you see this truth, persuasion stops being about words. It becomes about silence, space, suggestion. When someone believes they're free, they're the easiest to guide. When they think they're rebelling, they're the easiest to control. And when they think they're manipulating you, that's when you've already won. The most cunning form of reverse psychology doesn't look like manipulation at all. It looks like generosity. That's the paradox Machiavelli mastered. People trust those who seem to have nothing to gain. The moment you appear detached from outcome, your influence doubles because you've removed suspicion. Humans instinctively resist when they sense control, but they lean in when they sense calm confidence. It's why a ruler who says you are free to decide commands more obedience than one who says you must obey. The next Machiavellian weapon is the gift of autonomy. You deliberately give others a taste of control because once they feel ownership, they'll protect your interests as if they were their own. Let's say you want a colleague to carry out your plan. Instead of ordering them, you let them modify a small piece of it, change a line, add an idea. Now they believe it's theirs. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't in dominating others, but in turning them into allies through their own vanity. People don't defend you, they defend what they think they created. Then comes the reverse flaw. When you admit a weakness that doesn't cost you power, people lower their guard. I'm not great with details, so I'll rely on your precision here. That single line gives the illusion of humility, but it's a setup. They'll now overcompensate, proving they can be relied upon. You've transferred responsibility while earning goodwill. It's a trap wrapped in sincerity, one that Machiavelli used to make others work harder on his behalf than he ever could by command. Now consider the controlled underdog. Pretend to be underestimated, not weak, just a little overlooked. People feel safe around someone who poses no visible threat. But when you strike, they never recover because they never saw it coming. Reverse psychology in powerdynamics isn't about constant dominance. It's about timed dominance. You build comfort, then you reveal capacity. Every opponent who underestimates you is a gift. You've already won half the battle. The next layer is the burden transfer. When you sense resistance, don't argue. Transfer the weight of choice back to them. Say, you might be right. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. Instantly, their mind works to prove you aren't wrong. Humans crave validation of their intelligence, and that need becomes a leash. The harder they try to convince you, the more invested they become in your direction. Machiavelli used this exact method in courts and councils. He'd yield knowing that people can't resist proving themselves correct. The delayed resistance is another subtle tool. When someone expects you to fight, don't agree calmly. Let time do the persuasion. After days or weeks, their own uncertainty creeps in. They start revising their stance, not because of pressure, but because your lack of reaction created discomfort. Reverse psychology thrives in silence. People interpret quiet as confidence and urgency as weakness. Machiavelli knew this. A pause at the right moment says more than 1,000 pleas. Now let's revisit the mirror trap because its power extends far beyond mimicry. It's not just about reflecting emotions, it's about reflecting values. When you subtly mirror someone's moral tone, kindness, fairness, intellect, they unconsciously begin to trust you as an extension of themselves. Once trust is established, your influence becomes invisible. They'll think they're following their conscience, but it's really your voice echoing inside their moral framework. One of the most dangerous but effective techniques is the reverse ultimatum. When someone threatens to leave, betray, or disobey, you calmly let them. You should do what's best for you. That single act of detachment flips the balance instantly. They expected resistance. Instead, they got indifference. Suddenly, they are the ones seeking reassurance. The power of reverse psychology lies not in stopping others. It lies in making them stop themselves. Machiavelli also practiced the shadow favor. You help someone publicly but quietly take away the source of that help privately. They'll still praise you because they remember the gesture, not the aftermath. The mind clings to moments of validation. Even when reality has shifted, by the time they realize they're dependent, gratitude has already turned into loyalty. The modern equivalent, giving someone opportunities that secretly keep them tethered to your approval. Next is the concealed reversal. When someone expects aggression, you offer generosity. When they expect generosity, you show restraint. That unpredictability keeps people unsettled because humans crave patterns for safety. Break those patterns deliberately and they'll subconsciously chase your approval just to restore predictability. Machiavelli would do this to keep his court loyal. They couldn't tell if he'd reward or reprimand them, so they stayed cautious, compliant, always trying to read his silence. Then comes the sacrificial gesture. Sometimes you must lose a small battle publicly to win absolute trust privately. Give up credit. Let others shine. Make them believe you're not competing. This works because most people equate humility with harmlessness. Machiavelli's mastery was knowing when to appear harmless and when to reveal power. The first builds comfort. The second builds awe. Reverse psychology works best when people underestimate both your intellect and your appetite for control. Another layer often misunderstood is the emotional withdrawal. Emotions are contagious, but absence is more contagious than presence. When you withdraw emotionally, others project onto you. They start imagining what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what they did wrong. Their imagination becomes your weapon. The less you reveal, the more they construct stories that serve your image. This is why stillness and silence are tools of power. They turn uncertainty into obsession. Now, combine all of this into one truth. Reverse psychology isn't just manipulation, it's psychological aikido. You use the other person's force, ego, and instincts against themselves. You don't resist, you redirect. Machiavelli's true mastery wasn't that he tricked people, it's that he understood they were already tricking themselves. He just nudged them toward the illusion they preferred. But here's the final twist, the one most people never understand. The highest form of reverse psychology is when you stop needing it. Because once you fully understand how pride, ego, and control operate in others, you stop reacting to them altogether. You no longer need to persuade, impress, or prove. Your calm itself becomes magnetic. Your silence becomes persuasive. People start seeking your approval, your input, your energy. Not because you asked, but because you made it scarce. That is the quiet crown Machiavelli always wrote about. The kind of power that doesn't announce itself, doesn't defend itself, and doesn't chase anyone. The kind that bends reality around it without ever raising its voice. The kind that moves through rooms unseen, yet leaves everyone there moving in its direction. And the moment you master that, when your absence controls more than your presence ever could, you've reached the level Machiavelli reserved for kings. The level where control becomes unnecessary because the world already follows your design without knowing.